started in just a couple of minutes. I'll just let some people come in. Yeah, we'll be getting started shortly. We have an amazing presentation. We have an amazing presentation from our presenter today, Anna, and I think it's going to be very informative and a great benefit to you all. So we're definitely going to be getting started shortly. And we will also be doing a Q&A session after the presentation. So if there are any questions that you all have for Anna, she has a great background working with recruiting. And I think she's the person that if you have questions for, you can ask her. So if you have any questions, I would, write them down or drop them in the chat. And after our presentation, we'll be diving into those.
We'll give it just another minute and then we'll get started.
Definitely.
All right, we shall get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm really excited to speak with you, and thank you so much, Morgan, for having me tonight. For those of you that are able to join us, would love if you can just drop in the chat where you are joining us from and where you are in your process. So whether you're, a junior, a senior, a career switcher, would love to just know who's here. And then as Morgan mentioned, we would love to keep your questions in the chat as we're going through. So I'm going to be covering a range of content. We'll go over the agenda and we'll address your questions at the end. So definitely don't hesitate as you're thinking of them to drop them in, and Morgan and I will try to get to all of them, as much as we can, but we want to get through the content. So as Morgan mentioned, my name is Anna Kupik. I am joining us from Boston, Massachusetts. So it is a balmy 65 degrees today, and it'll be back to 30 degrees tomorrow. So it's a classic winter in Boston. And I am a managing principal or I'm a principal and recruiter from Galecki Search Associates, and I'm part of the IABA recruiting cohort, along with D.W. Simpson and Oliver James. So a few housekeeping items, just please make sure all your mics are on mute as we go through, to type any questions in the chat box. And then Morgan will have a copy of today's presentation. She's also going to be inviting you to a LinkedIn group as well. All right, so what are we learning today? We're going to talk a little bit about what a resume is, what you need to know before making your resume, talk about suggested resume format, talk about highlighting your accomplishments, and I'm going to give you my best resume writing tips. And this portion here, the recommended resume format and highlight your accomplishments, that'll be a little bit more interactive. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. All right, so just, again, going a little further into my background, I actually started out in campus recruiting. So you can see my trajectory here. Started out at Fidelity Investments, went over to Grant Thornton, have also worked at Liberty Mutual. So I have, until now, always worked with currently enrolled undergrad and MBA students. So I've helped hundreds of students get internships and full-time jobs. Love doing it. Now my focus is more on the experienced career professionals, but I still, of course, love working with students. I did it for a long time. I've done a lot of resume reviews, and so that's always been a lot of fun for me. And I've been a part of the IABA recruiting cohort for probably about 1.5 years now. So that's been a lot of fun to be a part of this organization as well. Okay, so I think that this is an important area to start out with, because a lot of times when someone puts together their resume, they think, oh, what's my job description? I'm just gonna put the list of all my responsibilities on there. In fact, I'm probably just going to take the job description for the job that I'm doing and put it as the bullets on my resume, right? And that is what a resume is not. And, it's important to think about your resume as the expression of your accomplishments, your past experience, your skills accumulation, and then also very, very importantly, not only as a student, but for the rest of your career, you want to be thinking about it in terms of transferable skills. Because you may not be always doing the same job in the future. You may want to get a different job, but you always have transferable skills to bring to the table. So that's going to be something that we think about as we put a resume together and as we think about highlighting your accomplishments. One other thing that I'll highlight before I go to the next slide is that a resume is also not a CV. There are two different types of documents. A CV, sometimes people use the language interchangeably, but they're not the same. CVs are not as common in the US, I would say, and I have seen them historically more in recruiting for academic roles, like the health, and also the healthcare industry and economics positions. So those are areas where you would see a CV more commonly. They're going to have a greater documentation of your academic credentials. They're going to have if you've written papers and things like that. So that's going to be more when a CV is used, and also sometimes internationally. So I would say internationally it's still very common, but here domestically in the US, the focus is more on the actual resume document. Another important thing to highlight with resumes, they are concise. So you don't want to have a multiple page resume at this stage in the game. You want to have a one-page resume, and you really want to be focusing on the skills and qualifications related to the position that you're applying for. Now, you may be thinking, oh my gosh, do I have to have a one-page resume for the rest of my life? The answer is no. As you go on in time, you're going to get additional skills, work experiences. It's just not going to be necessarily realistic to have it on one page. So what I always recommend to people is, and this is a great time to start now, is you're going to have a long form and a short form resume. So your long form resume doesn't have to be one page. It's a document that's just for you, that you're keeping all of the bullets that you've ever created about your jobs, all of your accomplishments, anything that you want to highlight about your experience, right? Your short form resume is going to be the actual document you submit for a job application. And that's going to be oftentimes tailored to that specific job. So, a lot of times you're going to have multiple versions of that short form resume. That short form resume will change over time. As you get into the workforce, you may not have the internships on there anymore. You may not have your high school experience on there anymore. You may not have your extracurriculars. So those are things where those things will come off in time, but you're going to have that on your long form resume. So you're not going to lose that information. And you may have more robust information in certain jobs that will reduce over time as that maybe some of those aspects of those jobs become less applicable to future jobs you're applying to. So don't panic. You may have a longer resume in the future, but in the beginning, at the start of your career at this stage, it's important to have the one page. And one of the reasons why this is important, and you may already be thinking about this, you may already hear chatter about this, you may be hearing, that technology bots are reviewing resumes at companies, but in most cases, a recruiter is still reviewing the resume, and they don't have a ton of time, right? Because when you think about, gosh, thousands of resumes might be being submitted across multiple jobs, 200 resumes getting submitted per a position, that's not a ton of time to get through all those applicants. So a recruiter is going to have seconds, not necessarily minutes, to get through that volume. So you want to have a resume that's easy to read. You want to make sure that you have easy to find titles, easy to find keywords, and that's what we're going to go into next, is talking about that format. All right, so what you need to do in order to be successful is to be prepared. You need to know yourself, and you need to know the job details, right? So we've talked already about making that list of accomplishments, right? You want to get very familiar with the experiences that you've had. And this includes not only your professional experience, so if you've had any internships, if you've had any work experience, even if it isn't in the field that you're applying to, that professional experience is important. You're going to have transferable skills in there. You want to have your educational experiences. So if there's projects, now that technical skills are getting more and more important, Excel, SQL, different programming languages, educational projects can be really helpful to showcase a time where you might have leveraged that. If maybe you don't have, an internship yet or a full-time experience where you've had that experience. Extracurricular experiences are important too. So a lot of employers want to see collaboration, examples of collaboration, examples of leadership. So again, if you've had opportunities where you've been part of or led student organizations, been in leadership roles in student organizations, those are great things to showcase on the resume as well. All right, the other half of things is knowing the job details. So I think sometimes a lot of people get really focused in just on their own resume. How do I, highlight myself the best that I can? You can definitely put together a resume just focusing on yourself, but you may miss some key transferable skills that you need to talk about if you don't actually take a hard look at the job description itself. You want to make sure that you read all the job descriptions that you're applying to, understanding that there may be differences between the types of jobs that you're applying to, even if the title is the same, right? You want to make sure you understand the culture. You want to make sure that you understand the nuances about the company that you're applying to. So we're going to explore a job description. And Morgan, can you see that on my screen? The job description? I
can.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Mm-hmm. All right. Awesome. So hopefully that means everyone should be able to as well. So, I put this up here. I just did a, quick search this week, and I grabbed, this is a current job right now that's available on LinkedIn with Unum. It is for their actuarial development program, right? So a lot of times at the beginning of the job description, you're going to have the brief information about the company, right? What kind of company is this? How many offices they are? How big are they? What do they focus on, right? And then as you go into the job description, you're going to get to understand a little bit more about the responsibilities. So as I've gone through here, I've said to myself, okay, if I were applying to this position, what are the things that I would need to pay attention to and make sure I've referenced in some way in my actual resume, right? So this is a leadership development program for their actuarial group. In this program, you're going to be focused on pricing, reserve valuation, claims risk analysis, right? So you're going to want to make sure that if you don't have direct experience in this already, which you may not, and that's totally okay, that you are demonstrating your experience conducting analysis, right? So that could be, again, through a school project, through a different internship that you may have that not been an actuarial, or a different work experience, right? But conducting analyses is important, right? And you'd also want to be speaking to the types of technology that you're using to conduct that analysis. In this program, they're going to be developing actuarial, financial, and leadership skills, right? So this is another area where you want to make sure you have some leadership experience on your resume, right? So whether that's the school clubs that you've been a part of, external organizations, if you're, a career switcher, and this could also be in a project a school project that had an impact, right? So you guys had a project where you were the leader of that project and can demonstrate the results. Obviously, something that is very important too is demonstrating that you're in the exam process, right? So when we get to actually looking at the resume template, I'll show you where that goes on your resume, but you want to make sure that you've put on there what exams you've already completed, what exams you have in process, and any exams that you might be awaiting results from, right? So they want to see actual commitment and progress towards that. And as you go down here too, so this is also what would be considered the qualification section, right? So what they look for in ADP candidates. They're looking for people who have achieved an undergrad or grad degree in these fields, and they want to see a minimum GPA of a 3.0. So you'd want to make sure in your education section that, you know, they would be able to pick up on those keywords and that they're able to see your GPA. We've already talked about the exams, so they're looking for at least one, right? And they're looking for the fact that you're enrolling and have a plan for additional exams. They're looking for creative problem-solving ability, right? So this is something you can take advantage of as you put together your resume bullets of, okay, when was a time that I was involved in a problem-solving situation, either, you know, at work or in one of my clubs, and being able to put together a resume bullet to demonstrate problem-solving ability, right? You don't just want to throw problem-solving, you know, in your skills section. You want to actually demonstrate through a resume bullet that you've solved a challenge at work. And that could be, you know, the way that you've, you know, approached a Excel model, or the way that you've used a certain software, you've made a suggestion, you've made a process improvement. You know, those are all examples of problem solving abilities. And so that's something that you want to think about. That's great transferable skills. Here with communication and interpersonal skills, right? This could be through demonstration of presenting, right? So if there's a time where you've had to give an important presentation that's influenced an impact. So you want to make sure that you have presentations in there, collaborations. So if in an internship, you've had to collaborate across multiple teams, if there's an important project that you've done that's had an impact in school, you know, having those demonstrated interpersonal skills is important. We've also already talked about leadership ability, so, you know, we can go to the next one, but proficiency with Microsoft Office. So this is something where you should have these listed out in your skills section. They should be technical focused, but you'd also want to reference them in your actual resume bullets. So if there's times where you've had to use certain pieces of software, especially Excel, especially PowerPoint, you'd actually want to bake those into your resume bullets. And that goes along with the practical experience in programming languages and statistical software. That's something where, yes, absolutely put it in your skills section, but if you've had a chance to actually apply that at work, internship, or in a project, you want to make sure to actually have a bullet that addresses that. Analytical work experience. So again, anytime you've had to work with data sets, right? So if you've had to work with data sets and put together an analysis, pass off your data set to someone else, right? Collaboration in order to, you know, for them to take it forward and put together a presentation. They want to see on the resume that you've worked with data, what types of projects that you've done. Legal eligibility to work in the US. So something that I've seen students do from time to time, or even professionals, is if they are authorized to work in the US, they'll just put a little footer on the bottom, permanently authorized to work in the US. So that way there's no question. You know, there's going to be a lot of times when you fill out a job application, it will ask you, you know, are you permanently authorized to work in the US? Will you now or anytime in the future need sponsorship? So you'll be asked those questions, but you know, it also just helps clear it up front. If you're able to work permanently in the US, to just put it right on the bottom of the resume. Couple other things that I'll call out here is just, again, for the nature of this role, you're going to be providing technical support to actuarial staff. And then you'll also, again, you know, they're driving home that you need to have at least one actuarial exam taken. So I've just pulled out, right, different areas in this job description to focus on, right? So these are all things that you want to make sure are touched on to the degree that you have experience in these, you have areas that you can talk about in these, you want to make sure to have those on your resume. So what I always recommend for people is actually take, you know, the job description, put it in a Google Doc, put it in a Word doc, and actually highlight these things so that you can say, okay, you know, when have I had experience in this? What transferable skill can I bring to the table? So I think it's just a good practice to get into, to get familiar and really have an understanding there. All right. So resume format. We're going to talk about two things here. We're going to talk about the reverse chronological format, and we're also going to talk about the STAR method as it relates to your resume bullets. So reverse chronological is definitely my preferred and recommended Did someone have a question?
I don't think so. I think they unmuted themselves by accident.
No worries, no worries. All right, so so there's several resume formats out there. You know, reverse chronological is my recommended and my favorite. There is also functional, and there's a combination of functional and reverse chronological. I really think reverse chronological is the easiest to read and to follow as a recruiter. So that's really what I highly recommend. I will pull up our template now that we've put together. So you'll have access to this template. Morgan will send out the materials after the presentation is completed, and you'll have access to this to use. Basically what you'll do is you'll just hit file, make a copy, and then you'll be able to make a copy of this document and use it. We would love for you to use it. Just make sure that if you use this document, these comments that I've put here are tips for you, but they will appear in the document if you don't close them out. So make sure to either delete them or close them out, resolve them so that they don't actually follow your resume as it's going into job applications. So important, and it goes along with proofreading, but want to make sure that's clear for everybody. All right, so very easy at the top, first and last name, put in your address. If you also feel more comfortable, I have seen this more recently, if you want to just put the city that you live in, the state, and your zip code, that's totally acceptable as well. You want to make sure that you have a professional email. So ideally something that just says your name. You don't want to use an email that is like a throwaway email that you don't check and, you know, has like, I don't know, basketball star 99 at Gmail. Like you want to make sure that it has your name in it, referencing your name. Then you want to make sure that you have your phone number. I'll mention this again as we get into the resume faux pas, but over the course of time, there's been times when I've tried to reach a candidate on the phone and maybe they don't answer, which is totally okay, but they may not have their voicemail set up. They may have a full inbox. And that's a challenge, right? We want to get in touch with you. We want to make sure we can get you into the process. So keep an eye on that and just make sure you have that all set up and you don't have a full mailbox. You want, obviously, the recruiters to get in touch with you. All right, so up at the top is where you're gonna want to put your actuarial exams to date. So you're going to put what you've passed first, and then underneath or on the same line, you can put, you know, the next exams that you might be taking, put in parentheses that you're awaiting results and that, you know, the date that when you took it. And if you have some upcoming that you've scheduled, you would put, you know, scheduled and put the date that you plan to take it. So you can put more of that information on here. This is how you structure your education section. So you'd have the school name, the location, what degree it is, your degree concentration, your GPA, and the graduation year or expected graduation year. You can also put, if you have a master's degree, put it in the same format, but because it's the more recent and we're going reverse chronological, you're going to put the master's degree at the top. Next section is the skills section. I recommend to focus primarily on your technical skills in this line. And it can go on more than one line, but these are just an example of some of the technical skills that you might include. Not an exhaustive list by any means, but you know, you can certainly add and subtract to the list that we have here. Next would be your work experience. So as a career switcher, if you've had any work experience to date that's more than just internships, you know, this is the format that you put it in. You put the company name, the location, the dates. This is a situation, and I intentionally put this on here so you could see it, where someone stayed at the same company but got an internal promotion. So this is typically how we have it listed out, where we have the initial start date of that employment and that it's, you know, they're there until now. But you could see when the promotion date was here, right? When they finished the initial role and started the current role that they have. In here, I've also pulled out some example of the types of bullets you would see at these levels in your career. So you can also see, the types of bullets that are used for collaboration or talking about technical projects. So these are just examples for you to see, but obviously you'd want to replace these with your own. I've also put down here that, if you've done an internship, how to list that out, right? And you can see that, again, this is pretty concise, right? We're looking at 2 to 3 bullets for each experience. And that's really where you want to try to stick to. You can also, I hadn't mentioned this yet, but this is another great demonstration of transferable skills that you'd want to bring to the table. If you've been a tutor or a faculty assistant at your college or university, that's a great experience to have on the resume too. So I definitely recommend putting that in this format. And if for you, maybe you don't have these work experiences here, maybe you just have internships, or maybe you have these work experiences, no internships, there's some additional sections that you can create. So you can have, project sections, and again, stick to, 1 to 2 lines, and that's where you'd want to be referencing technical data set, collaboration, those type of things. You can add a volunteer section, you can add a leadership section. So those are different things that you can swap in if those work better for you. But from a formatting standpoint, this just shows you where to go when it comes to actually putting your content in and making it easy to read. So as a recruiter, it's easy to see, okay, where are the actuarial exams? That's super important. Where are they at in school? What are their technical skills? And then, seeing what their work experiences are, seeing what their titles are, etc. Okay. So one of the things that you want to think about as you're actually putting your content together is following the STAR method. And this article that you'll be able to access later really goes a deep dive into what the STAR method is, why you use it, how you use it, not only in a resume setting, but in an interview setting. And then I've also created a worksheet for you all to use as you are putting together your own resumes. So it will reference this formula, but a lot of times I see, again, sometimes people just go right to their job description and say, this is what my job was, right? But we want to know what the actual situation was, what the task and action are that happened, right? So what's the challenge that you faced? How did you overcome that challenge? And then also make sure to have the result in there. So sometimes people will have a situation, talk about what they did, but never mention what the results were, right? And the results are very important to include for your accomplishments. And so one of the other things that I find is tricky and can be challenging, and Morgan and I were talking about this earlier, is, and this has happened to me too, believe it or not, but it happens to everybody. You get in a rut with the word choices that you're using, right? So what I've done is I have put together for you all just a little cheat sheet. And this is by no means an exhaustive cheat sheet, but there's 3 sections here. One is sample action words that you can use. You definitely want to make sure that you're starting off your bullets with a sample action word, but you can use these throughout the bullets. Sample accomplishment words, right? So this is as you're tying into what your results are. And then my favorite section, which is the sample redundant words and synonyms to use instead. So I am always using my thesaurus when I'm putting together my own resume or helping other people, because it is very easy to get into every bullet starts with develop or establish, or conducted is another one that I see, perform, provide. So definitely use your thesaurus as your best friend as you're putting this together, because especially as a recruiter, you want to see variety, right? It's hard to just read the same word over and over. If it starts reading, all the sentences, your brain will just automatically write it off. So you want to make sure that that you're using different word choices. Okay, so again, driving the point home, you want to make sure that you are crafting content that showcases your skills. I really shy away and don't recommend the objective, a summary section, and a non-technical skills section, because those items typically take up the top of the resume, right? And as a recruiter, if you don't have a lot of time, where's the section you're going to focus on? The top of the resume, right? And so you want to make sure that you are using your space strategically, right? You want to make sure that your technical skills are expressed in your bullets, your leadership skills are expressed in your bullets, collaboration, and so on, right? Because you can definitely say it at the top, you can just say those words, right, as skills, but if you don't have what you actually did in those areas, it's going to be harder for the recruiter to get excited, right? So you will see some templates out there that suggest objectives, suggest summaries, and there are some recruiters that use that. You will get different advice sometimes, depending on the different recruiters that you speak with. But my suggestion is to really focus more on the content of your resume versus using that really, really valuable space at the top. Okay, faux pas. So we've already talked about the first two. On CVs, you may see sometimes birthdays or pictures, but definitely not on resumes. So please don't include those there. Very easy sometimes to have typos. So that's another tricky thing that can happen if you use an objective statement. If you're like, hey, I want to work at XY, my objective is to become an actuarial analyst at XYZ company. If you forget to change that and you submit it to ABC company is going to be like, reject, this person isn't paying attention to details. So that's not the only typo that could occur, right? You could leave in my comments in the template, right? So make sure that's out of there. Make sure if you're using periods at the end of all your bullets, that you're doing that consistently. You can either do periods or don't do periods. Either way is actually totally fine, but just be consistent. Spell words correctly, use grammar checks, show other people the resume. Be like, does this make sense to you, right? Am I putting together proper sentences? Is there something that you, because you've been staring at this all day long, didn't catch, right? Totally okay. Use other people. Using acronyms can also be a tricky one, right? So if you're using acronyms and are used to it as part of your day-to-day, whether it's your school or your job, but this other recruiter reading it may not be as familiar. So you want to make sure to spell out any acronyms. Don't just assume that the person knows what you're talking about. Another thing I see is sometimes people try to get attention by using really unusual formatting. So they'll put, their name down the side, they'll put, skills over on the side, they'll play with the columns, play with colors. Definitely never use red. It's a detractor, for the eye. So you want to make sure that you're following a simple format, focusing on your content, and using black font, right? So like, just like black ink, using black font. And make sure that you're following a consistent font type and font size through the resume. So the way that you can create the differences between your sections is using bold, using italics, using underline. You don't need to play with different actually font families or things like that. You just want to use those things to distinguish, just so that it's a lot easier to read on the eye. Okay, so we're coming to the end here, and I'm happy to answer any questions after this. We can go back to any content that would be helpful to you. But you want to make sure to spell check and proofread, have multiple eyes read the document and offer suggestions. You want to spend time to read the job descriptions. Don't assume all jobs and companies are the same. You want to make sure to use those keywords and similar language to the job description. So it's basically considered mirroring, right? So you want to create that mirror so they're seeing that synergy between your experience and what they're looking for. You want to stand out by opting for well-constructed bullets using the STAR method versus font, color, format variations. Don't rely on font, color, and variations to get noticed. And then don't do what's called post and pray, right? Don't just submit a resume and say, okay, hope that they pick me, right? You want to network, and you want to network at the companies that you're interested in to get noticed. So make sure you're connecting with the recruiters, make sure you're connecting with professionals at those companies. And this does remind me, actually, now that we're at the end, that I did forget to click on one section here. This is actually quite an important section. So I've created a resume brainstorm worksheet for you, which Morgan will make sure that you have access to, but you can access it when you get this presentation. Again, you're going to make a copy of the document, and then you're going to follow the instructions, right? So basically, you'll use this as a working tool to put together your resume bullets. You're going to find a job description that you're interested in. You're going to copy that job description into a Word doc that we talked about. You're going to go through and highlight, the different skills, responsibilities that you need to make sure that you've referenced in your resume, right? And then you're going to look at column B, and you're actually going to put those qualifications in each of the rows. Some of the ones that I put here as examples may already be ones that you want to use from the job description. That's great. Then you want to take it through. Really get as detailed as you can. Detail the situation, detail the task, detail the action and result. This is where it's okay. You don't need to come up with a pithy 1-line, 2-line bullet, right? You just need to get all the information out there so that when you put together that STAR statement, you have enough content to actually put the bullet together. And then if you write your STAR statements well, you're going to have, probably 3, max 6 bullets per job or per experience that you have. So this will be a great document for you all to use as you're putting together your actual resume. All right. So we've come to the end of the formal presentation. I'd be happy to answer any and all questions that you have. Morgan's going to have you join the LinkedIn group, and then you'll have the opportunity, if you'd like, to set up a one-on-one resume consultation with a recruiter, either from Galecki or part of the recruiting cohort, DW Simpson or Oliver James. So thank you all for your time.
Yes, thank you, Anna, for that presentation. Like I said, I've learned a lot since we started talking about all of the resume review resources that they can use, and STAR and all those different type of theories. So I just really thank you for your time today. If anybody wanted to ask a question, I think you can drop it in the chat. Oh yes, a lot of people were saying thank you, impressive presentation. Yes, like she said, she's been working with campus recruiting, and that's a different type of recruitment. They work very well with student development. So I think that, like I said, she was the best person to talk with you all today. I don't see any questions. Any questions? If you have any, drop it in the chat, or okay, somebody said, how can we network after submitting our job application?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Sharif, are you a career switcher? Are you currently enrolled student? That would be helpful context.
Yeah. Maybe Sharif's typing in the message box, in the chat. It would be helpful because I know career changers and students, those are two completely different things. Oh, they said come in with the question.
Sure. Are you a currently enrolled, undergrad or master's student, or are you a career switcher?
Okay.
Cool. We have one.
Okay.
So you're enrolling in a master's. Okay, cool, great. So helpful. I'm happy to give advice on both. So I'll start out with, Sharif, who's going to be enrolling in a program. So depending on the program that you're enrolling in, right, they're going to have a range of different companies that are going to be recruiting on campus at the school. So you want to make sure that you're getting in touch with your career center, signing up for events, whether they're, who knows if they'll be in person yet, but in person or virtual. You want to make sure that you're meeting the recruiters, making an introduction. So whether it's at a career fair, an info session, you want to make sure to introduce yourself, let them know an elevator pitch, about you, about, your background. And you want to make sure that you let them know that you're going to be applying to whether it's an internship or a full-time role that they have, as well as networking with other people that currently work at that organization. So whether they're, in various actuarial roles, I think following up after you've applied with the recruiter, just a simple note letting them know you're excited, and that you've applied, asking them when you might be able to hear back, and then being patient in the timeline that they share with you. But it's always okay to send a follow-up after that timeline has elapsed. But I think, if you're currently enrolled in school, you're in a great spot because there's a lot of companies that do come on campus. There's a lot of companies that are looking for students for their programs. So you want to make sure to get plugged into that career center and make sure to go to networking events. Okay, so then for career changer. So what you want to do is you want to utilize LinkedIn also, and this could be for students too, if you're currently enrolled as a student and maybe you're interested in a company that doesn't come to your campus. But you can do searches for, recruiter at certain company, right, that you're looking into. And that's where you can send them a LinkedIn message, right? And just say, hey, I want to let you know I'm really interested in this organization, and I'd love to apply. Like if you already know when the opportunity is to apply to, you can let them know you'll be applying at that time. If you don't, you can ask them, when you're going to be able to apply, and start making those connections. And I would do the same with people who are in the jobs. So if they're an actuary, you can say, hey, would love to have an informational conversation. I'm an actuarial student, I'm a career switcher, would love to learn more about what you're doing in your day-to-day. So glad that was helpful. Okay, so we got a question about a good resume. How many number of pages? A good resume has 1 page at this stage of the game. So you want to make sure to stick to that 1 page. We have the template available for you as part of this presentation. So you can definitely leverage that template to start to put together and fill in when your actuarial exams have been and will be, where what your education is, what your technical skills are, and then filling out your bullets using the STAR method. John Markin, I am not sure what your question is. So you said that you're a current master's in financial engineering, but you're specializing in risk management. How many actuarial papers do you usually accept? I'm not 100% sure. Do you mean resumes?
Oh, I mean that during your time as a recruiter, usually when you are kind of screening people's resumes, do you look at how many actual papers the person has taken? Usually how many papers do you usually accept? Like you accept them as the power, as the chosen power that you're going to kind of contact later?
I'm confused by the papers. So are you talking about resumes or exams?
I'm talking about the resumes.
Resumes. Okay.
Yeah, on the resume.
Yeah, so you're asking, like, as a recruiter, how many people do I pick, and how do I know how many people I would pick?
Yeah, based on the number of papers the person has written.
Oh, papers.
I think I think you mean exams.
The exams, the
probably.
exams.
Yeah, the exams.
Okay, okay.
Okay, that helps clear it up. I was like, I'm not following the question. Thank you. So it all depends on how many exams are in the job description, right? So in the sample job description that we have looked at, they only required a minimum of 1, right? But they want to know that you're in progress and that you're going to be taking more exams. So that would really be judged based on what's in the job description itself. So I think for an entry-level position, it can go anywhere from 1 to 3. I will say that it is fabulous and you absolutely should have a plan to complete your exams, but you want to make sure that you are also gathering work experience in tandem. So you don't want to just get all the way, as far as you can pre-ACAS and not be getting that actuarial experience as well, because you need to make sure you have both to be successful. And we have seen some students really push to try to get as many exams as they could done, go pre-ACAS or even ACAS, but then they don't actually have the complementary work experience to go along with that. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then Blast asks, is the resume consultation free? Yes, it is complimentary to you guys. So, if you want to take advantage of that, then Morgan can work with you. But before you would participate in the consultation, you want to make sure to have a sample job that you'd be wanting to apply to, and have that job description that you've read. You want to make sure to complete the resume worksheet and then also populate the resume template so that you have something to work with as a starting point with the recruiter. Okay. So, go ahead.
Oh no, I didn't know if you wanted to answer that one last question that was in there, or did you?
Yeah. So the Kojo asks, how can a candidate with no actuarial experience make their resume CV appealing to recruiters? So, I would say that is where the transferable skills come into play, right? So I think having the exam commitment and exam progress, right? That's obviously table stakes. You do need to have some exams under your belt, and again, per the job description. But that's where you can take a look and say, okay, what does this job require, right? What kind of analysis, right? A lot of times analysis is going to be a component of it no matter what, right? Conducting analysis using the, Excel, SQL, so on. So showing that you've had experience in those areas, those will be the things that will stand out. And it doesn't hurt to do a little extra networking. So there was someone that I was consulting last year that was part of OLA, and I was working with them, working on their resume. And really, you'd be surprised. If you follow that STAR method, you will find, and you'll surprise yourself, that you have those transferable skills to offer, even though it's not in the exact setting that you're in. And this person at OLA, from OLA, they were networking as well. So making those connections on LinkedIn, having those informational conversations. I'm not sure, Morgan, are you guys offering a session in the modules on networking at all?
That will be coming up.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so make sure to take advantage of that session. Obviously, I can't give away all the secrets from that session today because we're focusing primarily on resumes, but I do feel they go hand in hand. And then, Sharif, I think we answered your question where it's not solely about the actuarial exams, right? You want to make sure that you have the minimum that's required in the job description, but you also want to make sure that you're addressing the transferable skills for the work experience too. Jean, look, the LinkedIn group, Morgan will send that out to everybody. I think probably by the end of this week.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I also got a message as well in the group chat. Yes, so this video is being recorded at the moment, so we will also be making that available via our YouTube page. So you can also check out session 1 on that page as well. And yes, our LinkedIn group, one, I'm going to be sending out an email, our wrap-up email that I sent out last time with the next session, practice assignment, etc. So I'll be sending out all the information that you need for the LinkedIn group as well. And but if the LinkedIn group is called 2022 IABA Bootcamp, Virtual Bootcamp. So you can look that up, search it, and you do have to request to join. And once I let you into the group, then you'll have all the information on how to get started and where you can find everything at, basically. So yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to, Anna, were you done with the group chat and really kind of, those were a lot of good questions, especially for the career changers. I know that we have a lot of those in the chat as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
I think we did answer everything. Les, just to circle back, I saw you put your question about the resume consultation. It is free. You just need to sign up through Morgan and make sure that you complete the resume worksheet and, find a corresponding job description that you're interested in, etc. But all the resources that I shared today, the template, etc., are all available to you. So in this presentation, they're embedded in the presentation, and then there's a slide at the end here that has the hyperlinks as well. So don't hesitate to send Morgan a note if for some reason the links don't work. I tried to set it up correctly, so let's hope that there's no technical problems, but you never know. But don't hesitate to give Morgan a shout if there's any issues. We'll make sure to get those to you. But myself from Galecki and a couple other of my teammates will be offering the consultations, as well as DW Simpson and our partners Oliver James as well.
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much, Anna. It's been really good hearing from you and your presentation and everything, and been really well working with you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. I saw all the locations that people are joining us from all over, Canada, China, Trinidad and Tobago, Dallas, Ghana. Saw several Ghana, which I got really excited about because I've been to Ghana myself. But Ontario, New York, Ohio, New Jersey, the Bahamas. So people from all over. So that's awesome. And I wish you all lots of good luck as you're going through this process. But I know Morgan is fantastic, and you're all in great hands.
As I say, go Ghana. Yes. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And like one more time, Anna, when they do eventually meet with you, if they do reach out, the best things to have done is the resume brainstorm worksheet and also your sample job description, correct?
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you have a resume brainstorm worksheet completed. You also have your sample job description, that available that you're interested in, and that you create a first copy of that resume. That way the recruiter can give you some feedback on that in that 30 minutes and help you out. And if you want even more detail on the STAR method, that's this article here, which I referenced here in the presentation, but it'll go more in depth for you as well.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. So yes, make sure that when you all are reaching out, that you all have at least try to complete those things so that it can make the process a lot easier and more effective. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, have a great evening.
Yep.
And we'll see you all soon, hopefully.
Yes, hopefully we will for our next session. Our next session is March 9th, and we'll be going over interview skills. And I will be, of course, sending out the email, like I stated before, with all of this information, the LinkedIn group, the PowerPoint. And if you are interested in connecting with Anna or anybody, just reach out to me. And yeah, and we're going to get the resume review started next week. So like I said, check out our LinkedIn group, wait for our email, and we should be getting started with everything next week. So thank you guys so much. And I can't wait to see you all for the next session. I'm very excited. All right. Have a good one, everyone.